We have a scheduled appointment at 6 p.m., an EMT appointment for Jeremy Clipadio.
Clipadlo.
The hot seat.
So, this gentleman is Jeremy Clipadio. He is currently an EMT and works full-time for the town of Irving as a firefighter. Just recently got his EMT and in partnership with our partners. All these guys from Irving are very cooperative and willing to assist in our organization. So Jeremy's gone out as EMT and we'd like to bring him on to the department.
Great. So when you just got your EMT basic, what brought you into emergency medicine?
Been on the fire department in Irving ever since I was 18. I started as a junior in Northfield. My dad was involved in it, so I've just been around it for forever. So
Yeah.
it's just kind of what I do, I guess.
And the EMT service serves multiple towns, and so
Yes.
you've been working with Irving previous to this?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Does anybody have any questions?
No, I'll just say it's always nice to have yet another Irving person. As Mark knows, the organic nature of how the service has become regional is due in large part to the relationship with the neighboring towns, but especially Irving with all the overlap between the two towns. So it's great to have you on board.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
Do you have any questions for us?
No.
So he is not a step in grade. He falls under the first responder rates that are set.
Okay. So I'll accept a motion to appoint Jeremy Clipadio, thank you, as an EMT basic for the Northfield EMS service.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
The term on that would expire 12/31/24.
Term to expire 12/31/24. Any other comments? All right. All in favor as amended? All in favor of this item as amended?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
An enthusiastic aye.
Welcome.
That's it.
All right.
Welcome
Thank you.
to Northfield.
Thanks,
guys.
Thank you.
Seat's not so hot, right?
Now the work begins. Now we got to get them cleared and get them working. So.
All right. So now's the time for citizens' concerns. So if anyone has citizens' concerns, I do want to remind you that we on the board can't comment or answer questions.
Would it be possible, do you think, to just change the agenda a little bit since the entire EMS group is here and do the first order of business?
Sure. I think
Just
that
as
makes
a-
sense. Do the ambulance EMT EMS update, chief job description, hiring timeline, screening and hiring committee.
Yeah,
I think that's a good idea. Thank you.
then Mark doesn't have to move.
Thank you.
Up and down and up and down.
Too hot to be
I know.
All right. So this is an order of business. Andrea, are you bringing the information?
Sure, and as is B, and certainly Mark, who was at the last meeting, but B also serves on the task force, so.
We just met on
Okay.
Thursday.
So it made sense to bring an update. I just wanted to talk a little bit about what the task force is working on. There's various subcommittee groups. There's a communication subgroup, outreach. They're working on brand identity and concepts, website, FAQs, narratives for information to disseminate in public outreach based on what the committee ends up coming forward with as moving forward with ultimately with the structure of the department and what that will look like. So the communication piece, big importance on that. Facility, there is funding in the grant for them to look at possible facilities and locations. So they are moving forward with that, reviewing a lot of stuff that's already been looked at prior for locations, plus anything that's currently being looked at. Governance, that's sort of the big one. Subcommittees reviewing the types of possible governance structures and what kind of written agreements, et cetera, they would like to bring forward. Recommend to the select board, recommend to the neighboring select boards, and ultimately to town meetings if necessary. The last piece is there's a staffing one. The staffing piece also looks at a lot of what were the recommendations from the previous report. Also, based on the budget that was submitted, there's some clear staffing guidelines that are coming into place, and obviously the select board decision and the timeline on things moving forward. So that's the task force update. I don't think anything you wanted from the task force update.
Well, I think the governance piece was really interesting for people because there were, just looking at the crowd and the discussion that we had, I think we initially thought we might be moving in a new direction in terms of district or having to work with the legislature or something like that. And clearly the group we want to go for the simplest thing possible. And so the discussion really centered around doing an intermunicipal agreement with the 4 towns. And we have, I don't know if they're called IMAs now or MOUs.
Well,
It's basically the same thing.
yeah,
but
basically the same thing.
But we would draft the same document, and then that would be used for each of the towns. And
Right.
Northfield would continue to be the home base, if you will, the hosting town,
Sharing.
and sharing with the other towns through the IMA. And
The big change would be, oh no, go ahead, Mark.
No, I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, the feeling of the 4 towns that were there was
Yeah.
that if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Right.
Is that
Yeah.
it seems to be working well, they're getting the services that they are expecting. They know that we have a lot of work still left to do when it comes towards what the assessment model is gonna be, the staffing model is gonna be, so on and so forth. But they don't want to change the name of the organization, they don't want to change the identity of the,
Yep.
of the organization, that they're happy with the services that they're getting and are happy to be part of the organization, so.
Right, and I think they felt really strongly about the organic nature of how it came about, what Mark put in place, and they're not necessarily rushing to some of these new models, which are somewhat untried and tested for for an EMS organization anyway.
Well, one of them is brand new,
Right, so
and
nobody
only
else.
one entity in Massachusetts is using it.
Right, so there's a little, and one of them's legislative, so if you go to the legislature and you set it in stone, and then you have
It's
to
harder
change
to
things, it's
change.
legislation every time.
And we're good, but I don't think we want to be the beta tester for the state.
No,
right.
So.
So the big change obviously is in talking about the funding, which is part of the discussion. What would that funding model look like? And that would change
Yep.
in the governance structured agreement eventually, and that's a big part of the discussion moving forward based on the staffing and how the operation would continue. How would the funding change? And
Yeah.
that piece, which was outlined much of in the first report, and some of the potential options, is the piece that I think is the biggest piece to still be grappled with by the group, and is just starting to be discussed
Yeah.
based on that. So
And
that's,
people felt that, I think every town felt this way. There was general consensus, both in the subcommittee as well as at the task force level, was that it's working the way it is. We don't need to add an additional organizational layer on top of it. That's difficult to explain to people. We think most of the outreach and communication should be on what's the service that they get, how much it costs, all of those kinds of questions that normally would come up at a town meeting. So we didn't want to add a whole nother layer of complexity either for the towns or for citizens on it. So we pretty quickly achieved consensus, and that's basically how we're moving forward, and then we'll need to work out the details.
So that brings us to the staffing.
Right.
So I'm being told that at your last meeting, there was a vote of the select board to move forward with a full-time chief position for the organization. First, let me just start by saying is that I am highly appreciative of the people around this table that in February unanimously supported me with what I was going through. And by the way, still going through. We have not received any answer. I'm still in the know with what's going on. With that being said, obviously my life has had to change as a result of that. I've had to pivot financially. This is probably the hardest conversation I've ever had to have with anyone. I mean, from holding the hands of dead people and their families to children involved and whatever. This one hurts me the most. Is that I will not be seeking to continue with Northfield EMS upon the hiring of this new position. I will gladly assist in the transition. I will, during this time frame where you are in the process of trying to find that replacement for me, I will be working to unplug myself from years of being involved in this organization. I have spent dedicated 32 years of my life to public safety in this town. Over 20 in EMS, with 19 of them being as the chief of the organization. I've known nothing else in my adult life other than being in public safety. And I have had mental, physical, financial deficits as a result of this organization. I have dedicated my life to helping others. It's now time for me to dedicate my time to myself. I brought you this far. I would highly recommend to this organization, to this board, to not be making unilateral decisions about this organization, because without the partnerships, the organization would not exist. People would be out of jobs. There would be people that are suffering as a result of not getting an ambulance. Just a very short few years ago, we were on the list of communities where you were going to wait for an ambulance and wait and wait and wait. We are no longer on that list. Go to the other side of 91 where they're waiting an hour for an ambulance to come from who knows where. We have something very special, and I encourage this board to continue to embrace that and to not let my legacy die. So, with that being said, I'm here to assist and make for a smooth transition. But my tenure as the chief of the organization, or as a member of the organization, is coming to an end.
Well, thank you so much for all the years of service and hard work.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions?
No, just a couple of statements. Mark and I have spoken at length after the task force, and I think Northfield EMS is here at this particular juncture and moving into an even moving on to an even stronger organization because of what you started a long time ago. And I've told you, you remind me of a startup founder, is that you had the vision, you had the passion, you had the persistence, and when a lot of other people couldn't see it, and you brought that idea forth and you poured all of your heart and soul and energy into it. So I know just how big of a transition this is for you and for the organization. But I think what you've built is really strong and solid, and you have long-term employees who've been part of the service, as have you, right from the start. So I'm pleased to work with you, and we talked through a number of different things that we'd like to capture and get on paper and make sure those things go forward. So I'm going to be asking the board to authorize me to work on the transition formally, so that I can report back, but as well work with any of the member towns individually on any of the concerns that they have. Because I know that's one thing that you're not just concerned about the department, you're concerned about the other towns as well. And we have a great thing going with the task force, so we don't want to, we want to make sure the transition is solid, captured, and everybody gets a chance to weigh in, but mostly try and capture what has been important because of Mark's particular knowledge and hands-on ability, especially when it comes to revenue projections and the accounting side of things. And we would not be in this place right now with the task force without some of the budgeting, the creative budgeting that Mark has done over the last 2 years especially.
Yeah, I've worked with Mark since day one that I've been here. Excuse me. And this is really hard. It's hard for me too, because I've been an avid supporter of Mark and the work he's done. And we wouldn't be here. The town wouldn't be here. The service wouldn't be here without the work that Mark has put into it. And I've seen the texts and the emails day and night, that, you know, constantly giving up his vacation time and his life to something that he really believed in. And it wouldn't be Northfield EMS without the work that Mark has done, and I've seen it on the ground level, right from the beginning. And he's fought the good fight with some finance committees.
I've had many fights, no question about that.
To stand up for what he saw as a vision, and it's a vision that really has come true. And I think that I can understand and appreciate how hard this is for Mark. It's very hard to let it go. It's like sending your kid off to college, maybe, and hoping for the best. And I truly believe that Mark has that hope. And I don't even know how we'd thank him. I don't know how the town would thank him. It's kind of immeasurable.
And his family too.
Yes.
Sacrificed a lot. Have sacrificed a lot for Mark. It's very, very hard, but.
As there are many people right now who are probably listening to this or will listen to this, and they'll be cheering that I am leaving the organization, I hope that the sound of the claps outweigh those.
Most definitely.
I've
Mark.
heard from so many citizens about how appreciative they are of your services and the EMS, how people come real quick and they take such good care. And that comes directly down to the leader, which is from you. So thank you for your service.
Thank you.
It's rare that we have any employee or a person who's dedicated to their cause as long as you've been dedicated to yours. You know, the organization would not exist if it weren't for you. And if it didn't exist, there's who knows how many lives wouldn't have been saved by what you helped create. There's a lot of people who are here today because they had someone show up because of a direct result of the efforts that you put in. So thanks for everything you've done. And really, I'm a hard person to impress. And what you've shown us in the 5 years that I've been here, and how you've led your team and how you've constantly kept your foot on the gas to move that organization to where it is now, it's very impressive. So you should be very proud of everything you've accomplished.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I will add that I'll go to the human side of it. It's difficult to walk away from something you've created after decades. And I can hear it in your voice and I can see it in your eyes. And the long-term goal is you walk away with your head held high and you've done a good job.
Thank you.
So don't let the naysayers drag you down, because they might shout a little louder at times, but you've done good work.
Thank
So
you.
don't forget that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anything else on the EMS side of the world that I can answer for you?
Well, I have had some citizens asking questions about the new job and about the task force. I think there's a lot of confusion about the interlacing of the task force versus Northfield EMS specifically, right? When does one start and the other, when does one stop and the other one start? So the timing for the task force, for the multi-town task force, which you're on, right, B?
Yeah.
Is when is the conclusory recommendation happening?
Hopefully, town meeting.
I was gonna
If
say,
there's
we'll have to
something
have
to bring
something by
forward
town
to
meeting.
town meeting.
This,
Okay.
this has
We're-
been like
we're
a
in the-
year and a half.
I say we're in the
Yeah.
process
And we're in
now
the second
of
phase.
doing the necessary analyses for the assessments, which will then, part of the outreach goes to the education of the communities, not just ours, but all the communities, so that we're prepared to go into next town meeting with educated voters about the situation, as well as what the potentially increased assessments will be for the communities, for the long goal.
So I will also say, just to simplify any confusion, or clarify, is that these relationships already existed. They were organic. And what happened is each town did a separate MOU with Northfield. So over the years, it's been, we talk about the relationship with Bernardston, and then at another time we talk about the relationship with Irving, and then most recently we've talked about the relationship with Gill. So what the task force does is just simply put a formal group together of those people who are already involved and already looking out for this Northfield service that that we all enjoy in the region, the
Well,
paramedic level service.
And they all have
especially.
vested interest in it. I mean, so
Yeah. It's hard to get paramedic level service. I think this has become more critical, the task force, in actually formalizing the relationship, because private providers are getting out of the emergency business. They're more in the transport business of taking people from the conclusion of their hospital stay to a rehab, because there's more money to be made.
Or to dialysis?
Right, and less risk. So,
So right
I
now,
hope that-
within the
does that help?
town, it does. So what
Okay.
we're doing, what the task force is doing is kind of codifying a relationship that already
Yep.
exists in bits and pieces, and making it an actual entity instead of 4 or 5 different entities, right?
Right, and Mark had the
Relationships, I mean.
Right, and Mark had the foresight to, coming off of the last report and onto this understanding that there was a transition happening, and that we needed to change the budget and the structure, and that was sort of a first step
First
into this
steps.
as well, with the, understanding that we needed more full-time paramedics, so from going from 1 to 3, that also was a part of this step. But the clarity to have here is the task force is working on that relationship. The department remains a department of Northfield.
correct.
So everybody who works for that department works for the town of Northfield. Every piece of that still remains as, in the same respect, a Northfield department. The chief, the officers, the paramedics, the EMTs are all Northfield employees. And as Bea was saying, in keeping the MOU model, that will not change. That is not proposed to change. The task force is not looking to change that.
Mhm.
They actually agreed in the governance subcommittee and then at the task force
The last
level
meeting.
that it's working. And as Mark said, if it's not broke,
Don't fix it.
don't fix it. They were happy with that model. In fact, Ken Hordwick from Bernardston made it very clear as a select board member, this is a town of Northfield department. The select board runs this as a department. So all the normal pieces that are in play stay in play the way they are.
So communities currently are sending $25,000 per town, including Northfield,
Yep.
Mhm.
to the enterprise fund.
Yeah.
And is it correct that does the enterprise fund cover all the costs of running and all the employee salaries and everything like that?
Correct.
Okay.
And
And actually this year for the town of Northfield, because of the grant that we got last year
Mhm.
to do the analysis of the organization, this is the first year where, yes, Northfield is being charged $25,000, but the indirect costs have been isolated to a point where we're actually going to be returning money to the town of Northfield as an offset, because the indirect costs outpace the $25,000 assessment.
Correct. So what he means by indirect costs are the costs of the employee's insurance, the cost of the accounting, all the costs that you don't see. It's not a paramedic going out. It's not a fix of the van. It's the cost of shared staff in the town hall. Wastewater does this as well. They pay an indirect assessment for the town to cover health insurance, payroll taxes, insurance on the vehicles, because they all fall under the Northfield umbrella. So an indirect cost is, the direct cost is paying the staff, comes out of the enterprise fund. But there's a lot of indirect costs that are billed through the town of Northfield because EMS is not a separate organization with its own health insurance. They're under the town, so that's an indirect cost.
Yeah.
Right, so that was all evaluated as part of the last grant that, in the last study, Mark worked with the consultants from UMass a lot on that to assess what are those direct, indirect costs. What are those indirect costs? And so that is the first time that they fully, there's always been some to pay for some of the
Anything that we could
insurance.
identify, but when you have it buried into
Right.
the town budget,
Yeah.
how do you isolate all these costs without doing a deep dive into it, which is what the consultant did. He did a
Right.
deep dive into the.
Right, so now that's been identified. So there's steps that we've been taking along the last year or so that Mark, working with the consultant on, to move this process to the point where we're now on the verge of it being a completely different entity, in the sense that it's the same entity but with a new agreement between the towns. And it was made clear that just 25,000 would be the first go around for everybody, and everyone would get on board with that, knowing that that number is going to change as we work through what those costs are going to be and what the costs that they raise themselves. There is a small amount of money that's coming from the grant to help with the first year. In the second grant, we put in some cost towards smoothing that transition, but by the third year,
Fully funded by
the
towns.
whole enterprise is intended to be fully funded. So we'll know more when the task force can finish its work on this.
With that being said, I mean, I just finished up the expenses and wages and so on and so forth for the last fiscal year. It's not by any means an actual number. It's just my calculations. Is even with not the 25,000 per town, is that we were in a healthy, positive cash flow situation last year to the tune of about $150,000. So what that means is that we put that money into our excess revenue fund for capital purchases, which is, I think, is the piece that in this fiscal year, as part of the analysis with this grant, is to determine those other fixed costs, capital planning costs that we don't currently technically have in there, to how we're going to fund that. And I think that the result is that we probably don't need to go much more beyond where we're at with the assessments for the communities, which is a huge positive savings for a lot of these people, because Irving, as an example, for half of their town, they're paying $100,000, something like that, some crazy number, for Orange to cover half of their town. These guys are getting
So they're really
service.
happy with the 25K.
Right.
Yeah.
But we don't know what that
We
number
don't.
is.
Don't quote me by any means, but I
No.
mean, I think there's a lot of positive that is still to coming out of this.
I think you might want
Obviously-
to clarify, though, on the capital part. You've always done capital planning, but the consultant had, especially with vehicles,
Funding model.
right, but the consultant wanted to have a specific funding
More
model and
defined.
time
More
frequency.
defined.
That it needed to be more defined, as opposed to waiting until you find out, like,
So
okay, this is the year that we need to
so
replace an
instead of Mark going,
ambulance.
we got enough money in the checking account, let's do it. Yeah.
But everything that you've bought capital-wise in the past has come out of the enterprise fund. We
Since
haven't asked
For the
the
most
town
part.
for anything.
Like 10 years ago.
Right. We had one. The town bought one ambulance, one brand new ambulance for us.
It's got to be almost 10 years ago now.
The
Yeah,
little
it's
old
2000.
one? The
is
number
Kyle still
one?
there?
No.
2007, I think it is.
Right, so
Was
that
was that one?
yeah, it's been a while.
Um,
And since then, no.
And then we've had some stuff, we've taken some ARPA money to do this, whatever it is, but I
Yeah.
mean, but for the most part, everything's come out of that fund, even,
Yep.
so.
I have one final question that I heard from citizens, which is so previously you were nominally a part-time chief, but we know that you were worked so many hours. But what is the difference in salary between the previous position and the one that we're hiring for? Is there a difference?
Well, the previous position was a stipend. It wasn't a
Okay.
salary because it was never considered a full-time position. So it was a stipend position. That's the same with the fire chief. When you don't have set hours,
But you get paid for calls, right?
that's separate, yes.
So the administrative and chief of the organization, that stipend is different than being also a paramedic and running calls. So you could go out and run, I could go out and run calls when I had my card. Go out and I could charge the town for being just like any other EMT or paramedic when they went out on a call. But I also received a stipend for being the chief position. Now, for the longest time, it was basically the gas money for me to go back and forth to the office. We're talking about $3,000-4,000 a year was what the stipend was.
It was pretty low.
Now you're talking about a contract for a full-time chief who is expected to be not only doing the administrative sides of the world, but also being a paramedic to help cover cover the truck, cover calls, cover the vacations and sick time and blah 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 blah. You're going to pay for that. I mean, that's a $100,000 position that you're talking about.
And that comes out of the enterprise fund and
Correct.
will be paid for by the enterprise fund.
That is funded through the enterprise fund budget.
That was all laid out at town meeting. It shows what the total budget is and then what the expected coverage is, which was 100%.
I would definitely, one of the successes of our organization has been our ability to put multiple people on multiple calls. And when I say that is, there are certain models that are out there where you hire nothing but full-time people, you don't have any sort of call force or anything to help staff that second truck. I would highly encourage that this chief person that comes in, there should be some sort of residency requirement or residency mileage within the district somewhere to help fulfill that second truck request, the third truck request, because we are running 2 and 3 calls at a time at this point.
And your call volume has gone up.
Yeah, we are at we're going to be at least 1,100 if not 1,200 calls this year.
Compared
We
to
did-
what last year?
Last year we were at just over 1,000, but the year before that we were like 800.
Yeah, so
And
it's
then
been-
we did more calls last month than we did as a service the entire year when I first took over in 2005. One
And-
month.
And Irving, which now we only cover half of, under this new agreement, we would be covering the EMS
Well, not
would be covering all.
necessarily.
So that is still being discussed within the task force as to whether does it make sense for the organization to expand to an additional geographical area. It comes with, it sounds great initially, but the problem is anybody knows trying to go over Gulf Road in the middle of winter, we have to be cognizant of that. There is support by the Irving people for us to expand into that section of the area. I am not involved in any of those conversations, again, because of potential conflict of interest with my still current but former employer over in the town of Orange. There was discussions of possibly expanding the business into that section of town. Basically, I would say less than half, increasing by about what the current call volume is for Irving today. But it's not a huge amount of calls, but it's just you can't really get there from here.
It's
That's the
really
problem.
geographically different. But I think what Irving had asked for, and correct me if I'm wrong, was Chief Wonka had asked for the consultants to consider when they're doing the models what it would take cost-wise and staff-wise, all of those other things for Irving to be able to do that. And that would be something that would need to be weighed. But they did want to look at that as an option.
It's part of the conversation, but there's been
Yeah.
no definitive answer that's
No,
been made there
Absolutely not, yeah.
for review.
All right. Well, Did we want to talk specifically about the job description?
Yeah, I have some
Timeline.
other technical things that you guys have to do. You're
Okay.
certainly welcome to stay for them.
If you're all set, I'll probably head out.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thanks, Mark.
Talk to you soon. There's a slightly updated job description. I just wanted to have you vote. This is with the consultant's comments, which I've been slowly integrating the compensation and job description consultants things into formats like ours. So this is one of the ones I jumped on and doing also the paramedic and the EMT. So I just wanted to make sure that you guys had a chance to review it and maybe formally adopt it. I think that, and we can get into this discussion in a few minutes, I think that my recommendation, rather than to try to classify this job, is that you look at it like you look at your chief of police and consider this a contracted position, and that there would be a contract with this chief. The same as there would be with a fire chief if you went to a full-time fire chief. Generally speaking, if you look at many communities, including some of the EMS communities around us, unless they just serve their own town, these are contracted positions.
And what's the benefit in your eyes between what we have now and the contracted?
Because you can put more conditions on it, like he said, where they live, how far they are, and other flexible conditions. Because again, it's going to be a position that's going to do a lot of time sometimes and less time others. So there may be provisions in the contract where you talk about how that works, how their time is a little more flexible than saying you work 40 hours a week. Because what happens if they're working 60 hours one week? Then they have to work 40 the next. So there's provisions you can put in on your expectations on how those hours work. There's provisions you can put in on vacation and benefits and all of that are more flexible if you contract with somebody at the chief's level, just like we did with the police contract. So that's why it says at the top that it's a contracted position. I mean, you can obviously change that, but I think if you classify it, you're going to find that you're going to have to then still work out all those separate things as opposed to putting them in a contract.
Okay, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, I was just saying, hopefully the quality and caliber of candidate that you get is going to be such that will not be an unreasonable expectation that you'd be contracting.
And the way that the job description interacts with the contract is, this is just for people who are wondering, this is the more general, and then the contract has specific.
It's actually kind of the opposite.
Oh, okay.
The job description is more specific usually with very specific tasks and duties broken out from the contract, which will reference the job description. Depending on the contract you write, the job description is actually more specific.
Okay. So where in here, you were just speaking of a little bit of flexibility in the schedule. What page is that on here so we can look at it?
Well, it isn't. That's part of your contract, is to talk about what's the expectation of time and how that would be worked out. Those are conditions you would work out in your contract.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions? Do we want to go over the timeline?
So I don't know if you wanted to guys take a vote formally on the job description, just to make sure that that's the most recent up-to-date one that the board has approved.
Okay. So we are.
You have a copy of it, I sent
I
you.
did. Yeah.
Yeah, you should
I
have all
believe
got it.
this was in the print
Yep.
material, right?
Yep.
So we're voting on. I'll accept a motion to instantiate the Town of Northfield, Massachusetts job description for emergency medical services chief.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So just a quick thing too is that technically under the budget, if you looked at the budget, there was a part-time administrative assistant position in, and we've kind of looked at that job description. It has been fleshed out a little bit, but I think that my recommendation this time is that the board consider waiting on that position until after you hire a new chief, because they may want to have an input on what that person's duties and role is. So we'd have a draft, but we would wait until the new chief is in place to make some comments and edits on that.
Makes sense.
I would agree with that.
Agree.
So the timeline. So July 2nd, we posted the job. July 22nd, which is next Monday, the applications are due. Just wanted to make note that we have approximately 10 at this time. So we have had some good response. I haven't reviewed any of them, so I can't tell you what they look like, but it's a nice response at least. So the 23rd through the 29th, and we'll get to what the screening committee looks like for you to decide. The screening group should be reviewing those, so that's almost a week for them to go through all of those, review them, and I have kind of a chart and a format that they can rank them. So they would rank them and determine based on where the levels fall, how many of them the screening committee should want to interview. It could be 5, it could be, oh, we got 8 great ones, but the screening committee would look at that and say, how many of them actually meet the criteria that we think is worth screening? Hopefully there's enough of them to screen multiple candidates. I'm hoping with that kind of response, and we're still not at the end, but we will have that, because it's great when you have a good amount of candidates that are potentially really serious. The 23rd to the 29th would be that time period. 30th then through August 3rd would be a time period in which the secretary, generally Sandra, has to call all the people that you're trying to interview and schedule those. So hopefully the screening committee would set upon a day or 2 days or 3 days, depending on how many, and then Sandra would do her magic and try to get them all scheduled into those interviews. August 5th to the 9th would be the screening interviews, so there's a week in there which she would be trying to set up night or 2 nights or whatever many nights needed to actually screen all those candidates. The screening group would then recommend forward what they consider hiring candidates. There'd be always at least 2 for hiring interviews, possibly more. There could be, depending on the candidates that come out. And so when that comes out, the next week would be the hiring interviews. So hopefully the screening interviews with candidates would be turned around to us, and we would tell them that usually the next week will be the hiring interview, so they're well aware to make themselves available and probably reach out to them on the first day to schedule those hiring interviews. And then if all goes well, and obviously this is subject to possibly getting pushed out to another select board meeting should it take more time, you could be selecting that at your August 20th meeting. Again, this is flexible depending on whether you can get everybody in for those interviews, so it might move out another 2 weeks. But that's kind of how the schedule would play out, whether we added time in there. So just so anybody who's interested, because I'm now going to ask you guys to serve, that look at those weeks to be available for screening and hiring interviews. If you
Can you just
wanna
repeat
serve?
those?
So the screening interviews would potentially, our hope is, well, I think that one's going to be pretty well set, the 5th to the 9th.
Okay.
Somewhere in that week would be screening interviews.
Of
Might be
August.
1 night, might be 2 nights, depending on how many candidates you have. The finalists, the 12th to the 16th, that could move a week out from there, depending on whether you can get all the screening candidates in and flexibility on those schedules. But those are really the 2 weeks in which you'd like to do the interview process. Having
have
said
a-
that, yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
No.
So we've talked about, and the chief just recommended that we ask for residency requirement, something like that. If those things are going into a contract, we should know what we're going to ask of people, if it's that
Yes.
specific, before we.
Yes, and generally speaking, once you've chosen who's going to be on the screening and hiring committees, I have already been accumulating questions from a multitude of sources. So I have some lists of recommendations, actually some from the task force, on qualifications and things that you want to keep in your mind when you're going through the process. Plus I have lists of questions that would become screening and hiring questions. So those would get sent out to the screening people now, and they could start looking at questions and hiring questions, and we could formulate those questions ahead of time.
But if we have any dead stops, we need to tell them ahead of time, so we would need to decide that ahead of time, right?
Right, and when the screening committee is going through that, because there's a whole week when the screening committee is doing the reviews, that's the time in which you'd say, oh, this, but somebody might say, I live in New York, but I'm going to move there. Then you could say, well, we could take them, but we'd set a deadline on when they have to be here. Like they have to be here within 30 days or whatever. So it's hard to nail that down, because saying they have to now currently live within X miles, well, that might not be the case. They might be saying, I'll relocate. I'll come up and rent a place now and move my whole family, or just it's me, or what. So
Just as long as they know ahead of time, of course.
correct. I think that will be the case, and when the screening group first gets the
Well, also so that we know how flexible people
Right.
are, especially if somebody's super qualified.
But you can imagine that somebody who lives in another state doesn't think they're going to commute. So, but you would set you have to live in X parameter. Yes.
Like 15 miles.
I think residency requirements are hard in small towns. An actual residency in the town requirement, because your pool of applicants for something this specialized may shrink to zero. You don't know that there's anybody qualified in your town, living in your town, to meet that very specific requirement. So I wouldn't say a specific Northfield residency requirement, but certainly a distance of how far you think that
Put a
Well, should be
perimeter on it.
reasonable.
What do we do for the police?
I think it's 15 miles.
Yeah, that's pretty standard, right?
Right, so,
15 miles from the Northfield border. Yeah,
Some places have done it from their station.
okay.
which is a couple miles, but it's not a huge distance. It's not like their station is 10 miles from the town border or something.
For EMS, like an 8-minute response time to the station is what you can make in a crew. So,
Yeah.
8-minute response time to the station, however many miles that is what we currently use for like off-duty.
But with a
people coming
siren,
from
that can
calls.
easily be 15 miles.
Yeah.
All right, so the committees, screening committee. Certainly usually 2 members, but I also want to go through the composition of it so that you guys can determine what that composition would look like. Generally, it's 2 members of the select board. Don't do a quorum. I'm usually sitting on it. I'm thinking to invite the police chief and fire chief, both, hoping they will both attend because they will be working with this chief quite closely. Members of the EMS Regionalization Task Force in the screening round. I think because that would involve other towns. I brought this up at this task force meeting just to see if any of them were actually interested in serving. I think the recommendation and the feeling in the room was not another chief, but select board members would be more appropriate. And I did get 2 volunteers, so that's not an unreasonable amount. One from Bernardston and one from Gill, who were willing to serve on the screening committee. So that's 7 members. I think that's, unless you can think of someone else.
Well, I would nominate, sorry, B. I would nominate B because she's already on the task
Oh,
force.
yeah, no, I would love to be on it. Yeah, that's kind of like a continuation of the work. So, yeah, thanks for saying that.
Any other select board member who wants to dedicate themselves to interviewing EMS candidates?
I would argue that with B being on there, if we have John there as well and Skip, I think the town's covered. That's just my personal opinion.
Either of you want to be on it?
If
Is there
somebody
room
else
to
wants to
add
do
a
it.
current employee for their future boss?
That's a difficult thing to do, potentially. It's not unheard of to pick somebody in the field, but it's something the select board can consider, but you have to be careful who you choose, because if anybody from within the organization applies, that becomes very problematic. So that's the only problem, because now it's a coworker. They're evaluating a coworker, and that's a completely different level of consideration, and that's hard.
Well, I mean, I would be willing to serve. I've got, my fall semester is going to be really tight, and so now would be a good time for me to serve on something, because I won't be able to in the fall as much. I won't be as free.
And since we just
Speaking of John.
volunteered John, so he'll be to be on the committee. No,
Perfect
to,
timing.
To be on the committee, screening committee, possibly the hiring committee for the new EMS chief.
Yes, I'm good.
Yeah, I would think so. And I'm going to reach out to Skip too.
So our
I'll send
days
you the
are
weeks we're looking at, so you can make sure you know
August
what the time frame is.
5
But I
through
think it's
9.
important that the 2 chiefs are interviewing for the new chief. So. So you're, Sarah, that's a, okay. So that's the screening committee, the hiring committee, and then are you all both okay with Ken Bordewick from Bernardston and Randy Crocher from Gill? Randy's a very good selection because he also works for the FERCog Public Health Office, so he's got a public health aspect to his
The twofer.
to his service. So, any others that you think?
I mean, if you went before all the towns that were going to be affected and you offered them, and
Yeah.
I think that the people who stepped up. I don't think we need to court other
Nope.
people if they didn't want to be involved.
Okay. Hiring committee. Is it going to, it can often be the same two select board members, if you're good with that.
I'm fine with that.
Usually it's, and then I don't know if both chiefs want to partake of that. It could be a discussion they have, or whether you guys feel that you want to say both chiefs should partake of that.
Yeah,
And then in that case.
I think so.
I would think so.
Generally, the hiring is, and I would recommend that it sticks to Northfield, just because at this point they are the hiring committee and a for Northfield employee. So anybody else from the town that you think we're missing that we'd want to add, or just do a smaller 5-member committee and be happy with it?
So who's on that's one, the two chiefs, the two
To
select board,
and usually I sit on it. That would be it. That would be the 5-member committee for hiring. Knowing that hiring is public and we post it on the board. Those
They're
interviews are
public
public.
meetings.
Those are public. Not screening. By law, that's an executive session, so to speak. But the hiring committee will be public for the finalists.
I'm good with those 5.
Okay, then one more thing, well, maybe it's not one more thing, but contract. I'd really like to have somebody, and this can be a completely different group, review the draft contract. Gotten a couple from other communities and other local and smaller agencies who have contracted employees to at least be reviewing this. This can certainly be done behind the scenes, and nobody, doesn't have to be done through a meeting. At least like 2 select board members or 1 select board member who's interested in reviewing the contract.
Mm-hmm.
This is just reviewing the makeup of the contract at this time, not necessarily putting in the final terms for a finalist, but just saying, this is the contract structure, these are the types of elements we want in it, and then the potential pieces, so that a draft contract emerges.
I'm willing to also do
Yeah.
that.
I am too.
Yeah, it can be the same people.
And
And
because
then-
we'll have been talking and involved with everybody else, I think.
Right,
so.
and it can change, as you see what's coming before you, but it would good to have a draft contract in place as you're moving through the process, and not
Yeah.
be at the end going, oh yeah, now we should make a contract.
Yeah.
Right.
That's good.
Okay.
And just the other thing is, could the board authorize me to work with Mark on
The
crafting
transition.
the transition plan?
I think that's a good idea. Can you give me more specifics about what you're talking about?
Yeah, well, it's basically succession planning and getting, we already started after the task force. We had a discussion about some of the things that he was concerned about. So I just started a list of things like staffing. It's really a checklist. So for the new hire, like staffing and recruitment, what are the general needs, what are the applicants in the pipeline, who's who, full-time versus part-time, certifications, things like that. New employee onboarding, any discipline, communication with staff, for example, the platforms that they use, the department meetings. This is so that the new person coming on board has a list, and then Mark can kind of go through, here's how I've done it. And
It's an opportunity to pick Mark's brain before
Exactly,
we lose
yeah.
everything in it, I think, more than anything else.
stipends and pay, because there's stipends in the budget for different roles within the group. Anything else, as employees have become full-time, they have benefits, holidays and vacation, but with the scheduling, that can sometimes be problematic. If they're scheduled to work on a holiday, how does that work? It's just making sure that we check off all of those boxes. The other thing that I had was under organization, so all of the coordinators, the training, the captain roles, the committees, agencies, and organizations. The more I learned, there's regional committees that the chief sits on. There's working with dispatch and medical oversight. So for EMS to actually have drugs on board, they have to be under the supervision of a physician in the area, making sure that's all captured.
So you're going to make a list
I've already started.
from his experience.
Yes, I've already started based on what Mark was telling me, and I'm just going to put that back in front of Mark, and then as Mark starts talking, I'm just going to capture it and refine it.
Okay.
So then he
And then that
can-
will go to the screening committee? Your list?
It could to some extent.
It could, but whoever the finalist or the appointee ends up becoming,
It's their
they would be
transition.
starting with their transition plan already listed out. So then if there's questions, we can make sure that that new person, the new chief actually gets all of the information from the old chief.
Yes.
And as a matter of fact, and then gets oriented to who's who in the department and what they're currently doing, and if there's any concerns within the department.
So that then goes to the hiring committee and is distributed to the finalists, the final interviews?
I think it's
My
more something
thinking
you would
was
give to
more-
the new hire
Yeah.
Okay.
when they're
It's
on
really
board
to onboard the new hire so that the
to transition.
outgoing chief has a formal list of topics that he can go over with the new hire.
Okay.
So
I think it may be relevant, though, for the people on the
Yeah,
hiring
oh,
committee
sure,
to
I
have
can-
access
yeah.
to it.
This is just something that I wrote down based, I also looked at all the job descriptions, and in talking to Mark and having worked with Mark over the years, it was just stuff that I started a list, and I'm gonna have Mark look at it. So it's really Mark's list, but I'm helping him capture stuff, as you know, working with other departments, capturing what's in people's heads.
Okay, so could I hear a motion to authorize B to work with Mark Fortier to make a transition document?
So I'd be working with EMS in general, and then I would also be reaching out to any of the task force members that would, if there's anything regionally that they want to make sure gets into that too.
So why don't you make the motion, because you know the
Oh,
word.
sorry. Okay, could you authorize me to work with EMS and task force members on a transition plan to aid in the smooth transition from old chief to new chief? How about that?
Mm-hmm. And that'll be disseminated to,
Whoever wants to see it.
okay.
But basically, the goal is to have a smooth onboarding process for whoever the new chief is
Second.
before the old chief leaves.
Was there a motion?
So moved.
There you go.
Okay,
Second.
thank you.
Thank you, David.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great, thank you. And I'll report back too, so,
Okay.
well,
Got another one who's here to talk about the new speed sign, so maybe we want to move him up so he doesn't have to sit
Okay.
through the whole.
Excellent, yeah.
Woo.
Chief?
How's everyone?
Good.
How's it going?
You?
I'm great. I love summer, so. Everyone else complaining about the heat, I'm like, I'm not a summer person, so.
are you all ready for the bike rodeo? Is it tomorrow?
Yeah, tomorrow.
Cool.
Yeah, good to go. I mean, we're out to, thankfully we have the cafeteria, so we have to monitor things to make sure no one gets heat exhaustion or anything
Yeah.
like that. But we got a lot of ice cream and water, so gotta keep them going.
Excellent.
Good.
So I invited John to speak about this because people have probably noticed that there's some new signs.
Well, and you posted your data on Facebook too,
Right,
I
so
saw.
these
Yeah.
new stationary solar radar units that were funded mostly with the special town meeting money in January, and then the enforcement is funded through the municipal road safety grant. We got a $20,000 grant there for that, so just figured maybe you'd come and update the board on what your thoughts were and what you're seeing and
Yeah.
implementation.
Well, my thoughts are pretty simple, which is they're great to have, but that I'm a little bit biased. I'm the chief of police, and I get all the complaints about speeders, and it kind of is our job to keep the speed down. But objectively, I'd like to have some data other than myself. I constantly observed, because I have an unmarked cruiser, and a lot of people are saying everyone knows it's a police cruiser, but I don't think people realize how radar works. Maybe we have it in the front and back of our car. Anyone watching here, we have it in the back and front, depending on the cruiser, but ours all do. I can get a car coming at me. I can figure out on a different mode, fastest mode. If, for instance, if someone's coming at me, I could see the other car is closing the distance and then hit the fastest, and I could see what the speed is of the other car behind the other car. Well, that's why a lot of people said, but I was following so-and-so, or the car in front of me. It's like, yeah, you were following them, but you're catching up to them going 52 while they were going 35. The same thing goes for, it will calculate my speed and then figure out the speed even if I'm going forward. So the technology's been around for a while, and we use it all the time. Sometimes I use the handheld radar while using that. We also check it in the beginning and end of shift, so it's pretty reliable. So people that come to me and they're like, I wasn't going that fast. Anything's possible. Like I entertain what everyone says, but it's pretty good.
You know what Curtis said when I was talking to him one day, because he parks out in front of we're always talking about like where he parks, in front of EMS, and I'm like, that's kind of obvious, isn't it? He's like, you'd be surprised how many people I catch.
Yeah.
So right there on Main Street, they're parked right in front of the EMS building. People zoom past the police car.
Yeah.
I was amazed.
Anyways, I have an unmarked car, and I also have to. I just try to be upfront, transparent, and objective about things. And from my experience in my car, you're always going to have speeders, but do we have like an absurd amount of speeders, a ridiculous amount of speeding? We honestly don't. But it does feel that way. People are correct. It's like I'm setting up the signs and I feel a truck go by me, the wind's going, I can feel it rumbling, but it's only going 35 to 45 in the 35 to 35. So I'm not saying we won't pull you over for going 5 miles an hour over. I'm not setting any limits on this, but at the same time, we'd be pulling over everyone. So we try to be reasonable about it, and different roads are different than others, but 35, like Main Street, that's a road you should be going 35. You know, if you're starting to get over 40 up to 45, and we get you, maybe I'll throw my blue lights on and slow you down. Most of those people are just kind of not paying attention, but that's what the road signs do. They kind of get you out of it when you're looking at a road sign and you're the person, and they help me because I'm always trying to be fair and equitable, and that's what I want my officers to do, because people don't understand that we write a ticket, we go to court. There's so many variables and I understand this is not defensively. But if I write a ticket and it goes to court, I gotta sometimes pay someone overtime to go there. There's like financial obligations to writing tickets that are maybe the person didn't know, because like I have one resident say, well, you say you don't give someone a ticket if it's their first time speeding. I've never said that. I'm just saying I take it into account. You know, you're 60 years old, you've been driving for 40 years, and you've never had a ticket and got pulled over, and you're going 45 on Main Street, I'm probably going to understand that the money is not going to cause what I want. It's just the education. So it's not about being punitive. It's about educating people to slow down. Well, these radar signs really work because they take the people that are inadvertently speeding and go down. And they work for me personally, not to make it about us, but because I like to be fair, and I'm always weighing, treat people the way you want to be treated. And I'm more likely to give you a ticket now. I'm just letting everyone know if you drove by the sign. If you drove by the sign, then there's no debate about it. And that's what I've been finding myself saying. I'm like 300-400 yards down the road with the sign, and here comes someone, not as many as there used to be. So now there's less of them, because most of the people are all like, oh, let me slow down and be considerate, because I didn't realize I was speeding. But the person that wants to continue going 10-15 miles an hour down the road, there I am sitting. I know that you just passed the sign. Then it's not a guessing game for me. I know that you should have saw it, and there's another issue if you didn't see it, and then that helps my enforcement decisions or discretion. So can I go on about the radar signs to answer that first question? That was a long one.
You had the temporary one down next to right attached to the speed sign.
Yeah. Yep. And so, if we sit there, that's also a reason, like, if we're talking about fair and equitability, we don't like to sit at a speed change either. We're not here to gotcha, like, with someone that's going 47 and then they're slowly dipping down and then they pass the 35 within 5 feet and you're like, well, you're getting a ticket.
Yeah.
So that never leaves anyone with a good taste in their mouth. That's how you're going to have bigger issues with a lack of compliance, because people are less likely to comply when they don't feel like the action was fair against them. So that being said, the speed sign data that you saw, that doesn't, even though it looks great for us, it was like 99.8 whatever of not speeding. I'm not saying that they're not speeding on other parts of Main Street.
Mm-hmm.
They're going by the post office, they're going by the elementary school, definitely periodically faster than that. But generally speaking, we got a pretty good Main Street. I don't take the credit for this. I inherited a police department that was very motivated, and they had a good reputation, and that's carried on, and I want to keep that carrying on. And so we do have we do a lot of traffic enforcement. So I'm happy that that's kind of keeping the speed down. I think it's the traffic sign. Now adding the traffic signs to the equation, I think, is going to really make a big difference. I think people are going to be happy with that. The last point I'll make is it's almost like a perception thing also. Is sometimes I hear like there's not as many stops, but I look at the stats and I can go back, whenever the new database was, 7-8 years, I can see every year the difference, but
Traffic stops.
The number of traffic stops. I will say, the prior chief Rob and I, we don't know each other, but like we're different people. We're gonna have different perspectives, and so. But my perspective is, I like the officers to go out there and patrol. I don't like them to sit in one area. I also find that when you sit in one area when you're doing traffic, it's not as successful as roving around where you're going to catch more of the speeders, because as soon as you sit there for 1 minute and 2 cars pass, they flash each other. And the next thing you know, you're not catching the people that are actually speeding. And you want to catch the speeders that are always speeding, because they're going to disregard the speed signs and they're going to keep going. Also, I think Northfield is bigger than Main Street. Northfield is bigger than Gulf Road. Everyone wants a little bit of attention on the roads. Well, when there's one officer on, now, as of coming up in August, we will, for the first time that I know of, every day we will have 2 officers on for day shift. So that's the highest traffic volume during the time. So we'll have an officer that's more dedicated, keeping it to Main and Gulf, but getting out there on 142 where I hear complaints, or up on the top side. So.
And down Millers Falls Road, down
Millers
by
Falls Road, Ashley
library,
Road, Brian Gordner was here. We hear about all of them. So what I was going to say about, one thing about cruiser stops is, when you were a police officer, how long did that average stop take? You got to write a ticket, you're probably like 10 or 15 minutes if you're writing tickets. Now we have, right in our car, a printer. So we're done. So Shelburne Patrol asks us if we're okay. If we're on a call, like a traffic stop, they will call us on the radio and say, are you okay? Do you need assistance? Your status, they ask you. And you say, yep, we're good. And so that's in case something bad happened and you didn't get to your radio to make sure that everything's good. That happens at 5 minutes. The goal in 2024, or since I've been here, I've learned this unspoken goal, which is to get your traffic stop done before you ask for your status. So the average traffic stop is done probably, depending, Oleg is super efficient. He can get a traffic stop like 2 minutes. I'm still doing traffic stops with tickets, so I'm like 10, 15 minutes. But if you're in your yard gardening, or if you're in your house doing whatever, and you think you're always looking at your road and you know if a police car is there, our stops are, you didn't see me go by, you didn't see me sitting out there for 10 to 15 minutes. We're not out, you're not seeing our blue lights out as much, because our traffic stops really are that quick. And I think that is affecting people's perception, where they're like, things are different than they used to be. It's like, yeah, the technology's changing. Like, I can't make a stop go any longer than it should go. The citizens have the right to be on their way. I can't say, oh, let's sit out here for an extra 10 minutes so everyone sees you get punished. It's like, that's not what's going to happen. So those little factors, I don't think everyone really thinks about all that stuff. So, anyways, that's the speed signs.
No, that's interesting, all the ins and outs and nuances of traffic control.
Do those signs have blackout mode?
Yeah, it's just called spy mode, and that's
spy mode.
So that's what I had on Main Street. I'm not displaying their speeds, because then they would slow down. So I got data without most people even noticing they're there. I
Right.
guarantee
They think the sign's not working.
Yeah, and it was like unbelievable to me. I was like, our stats are really good. It's like most of the stats on there, if you're looking at them, the high speeds, I can actually see when the person came through, which is also a good investigative tool. But that being said, I could see, at Gulf Road at 6 in the morning for these last few days, someone's been speeding through. And then I'm not normally on at 4 in the morning, but a couple of mornings I've woken up at 4:30 in the morning. I'm like, get that person speeding through. And then I pull over.
I'm gonna find them.
And then I pull over the police officer. I'm just kidding. No, that has. I mean, that's the type of thing that happens. Which is like, there was one day I saw like someone speeding, and it was that big call on Hinsdale. It's like all the backup is headed. I'm like, who's
gotcha.
flying through Main Street at 4 in the afternoon? And I look into it. I actually use the cameras here to look into it because I'm thinking, no one. Wait, did someone come through that fast? So, but that's what spy mode is. But
Yeah.
there's no cameras. There's no, like, I believe in the good old fashioned, gotta catch you to catch you. Like, I'm gonna catch you, not get a video of it afterwards.
Yep.
So, any other questions, Don?
What are any additional plans coming up?
Yeah, just 75% approval. We have, and then I'll have them on Main Street. They're on Warwick Road as you're on both sides, but that's just because we have an extra one because they're going to go to Millers Falls Road. 142 on both sides of the 25. Warwick's the 25 on both sides. But one of those is going to end up going, each one of those are going to go to Millers Falls Road, both ends at 45. And then on Warwick Road, I will then take the one that's remaining and move it to both ends back and forth because it's portable. The Main Street and Millers Falls, Main Street, for instance, I have the signs. I put them up here on Main Street without DOT's position, but not displaying the speed.
Yeah.
But they're currently, I had them out, but I had a couple people like give me that, I think they're gonna steal them type of look to them, like the solar panels portion of it. And so I gotta figure out a way to rig that. But I'll put them probably on Ashwood Road or somewhere else.
Sorry, I'm just listening to the
Yeah.
all my windows are open at
Yeah,
home.
so that's
No
a
problem.
factor right now. So that being said, in however long it takes to get the rest of the factors done, then we'll have them out on Maple, Gulf, top of Gulf, both ends, Warwick, one side, 142, one side, moving around, and then Main Street and Millers Falls.
And what about Upper Main Street? Is there any?
Yeah, no, I mean, if they expand to 35, but they're probably going to just be in the 35. But like, it's kind of like you see the other roads, I'm trying to get as much usefulness of them as possible.
Yeah.
So when we went to go put them up with the town garage, thank you town garage, as we went to put them up, I was thinking, well, it'd make more sense if we had them say 25 miles per hour ahead. That way they're further out than the actual 25 zone. And so that's what we strategically done for like for Mount Hermon Station Road and for Warwick Road. So they're quite far.
So they can see the sign and then you would encounter the.
Yeah. So now if you're going down Warwick where it splits off there, there's the signs way before the 25, which is near the curve. And so then someone's going 40 and they see and they don't know what the speed limit is. They're looking at it and then all they see is 25, but it says 25 ahead. So,
Okay.
Great.
It's fascinating.
yeah.
Yay!
Yeah. Okay. I got nowhere to go because I'm kind of stuck, right?
Make a run
Go
for
home
it.
with this. All right. We're good?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks for the update.
Thanks, Joe.
You'll have to come back though and do another update on. I don't know. It's just fascinating. And I think people at home really appreciate it. I know I've seen the comments on Facebook. So
Yeah. Well, people might not also know. I just want to reiterate that.
Yeah.
We have now Officer Brown is here, Dale Brown.
Yeah.
So, part of the reason why we're going to have enough officers is because we've hired that 5th officer. I think it's probably the first time that we've had a 5th full-time officer. Again, we're not expanding the budget. I'm working within the budget that we have.
Right.
But we don't have the luxury of having all these part-time officers. Honestly, I appreciate from a management point of view, having full-time officers because it's easier to have more control over them and
the
uniformity.
schedule.
Yeah, it's easier to schedule. So now with Officer Brown joining the department, we have, since I've been here, we have Chad Sumner that's brand new.
Yeah.
We have Curtis Weaver that's
relatively new.
Not
Yeah.
Sumner, but I mean new to Northfield.
Yeah.
Myself. So Oleg's the
He's like
senior
the old
person. He's a
man.
senior
Yeah.
full timer or whatever thought that. So we've had a lot of great movement, and I'm right where I want to be. I mean, the town.
You know what? Congratulations, because I know you've really been working on this
Yeah.
this whole staffing thing and getting through the police reform and the part-time bridge stuff.
Yeah.
Congratulations, because I know you've been working on it since you arrived here. And it's,
Yeah, and thanks to the select
Yeah.
board for the support, and it hasn't been easy. It's one of those things. It's tough to recruit people here, not here but anywhere. It's tough to find police officers.
Yeah.
But Northfield has not settled on the quality of police officer that we want. So
No, you have a
we
good
haven't
team.
settled. We haven't been like, well, we can't find anyone else. We're going to settle with this person. We've tried people, and those people didn't work out, and we tried again. And all that stuff that affects the budget also affects how often you see an officer around. Because some of this was, if we're training a new police officer and we have several police officers, we're not going to be as available out here when a lot of the training has to do with report writing and the computer system and all that stuff. It's like probably 2 to 3 months worth of training depending on how much experience the person has.
Yeah.
So it's good that everyone's up and running, and we're going to, I'm hoping that everyone's going to be happy with the police department they have right now. So.
Well, I know that you're hearing, that you often hear people complaining about the speeding and,
Yeah.
oh, no, they're going too fast. But you know what I hear so much is people really appreciative of your presence. And I always go back to it, but
Yeah.
one of your officers, my kid was going on a bike and he rolls down the window and they just had a conversation.
Yeah.
And that is just so important.
Yeah.
That community
Yeah.
engagement is
Yeah.
so important, and I think it's an importance that shouldn't be overlooked.
Yeah.
So I don't think you are, but I'm just saying, I speak to people who say, oh wow, it's so great to have, not the people complaining about the speed, but even some of the same people, it's
Yeah.
so great to have a good police presence
Yeah.
and a good community presence. So
Well,
you're doing a great
part
job
of it.
in that
You're going
part.
around and
Yeah.
talking to people, and I would say, I'll just expand on that for a second. Appreciate the feedback. That's great. A lot of times when you're in a situation like I'm in, it's almost like you sound defensive, but I'm not being defensive because speeding, if people are speeding around, that's my job security.
Yeah.
If it's bad, then I'm going to have to ask for more money or something like
Yeah.
that. What makes it tough for me is that it's easier politically for me just to agree with people when I know that that's not the way that it is. And the tough part is trying to explain to people that sometimes it's perception, and people don't like to hear that, and so it's tough to word that in such a way that people understand that you're not being defensive. It's just, I want you to understand that when the road's curvy or narrow and we don't create the speed limits, that a car going 45 miles an hour does seem like it's going 55 miles an hour, but it's not going 55. No matter how I make it happen, it's not going 55. And so,
Well, having those data will really help.
yes. And so I hope anyone watching this, that's not an attack on anyone that, like, people are speeding by your place. 100%. We will go out there and do it. I have it on my road. I have the thing out there. If people just aren't speeding, if anything, it'd be nice if we could lower the speed limits. I'm all about that. But same people that complain, I can tell you, we had that grant. It's also an enforcement grant. I can't tell you how many people that complain about speeding that are doing the same thing. I mean, I'm not, the stories I can tell you where I'm like, pull over someone on Gulf Road, I'm like, but you're complaining about your speed on X road, and you're over here flying on this road, or you live on Gulf Road, and you've complained to me for the last year about people speeding. But when you're in a car, it doesn't feel fast. One person I pulled
Right,
over
yeah.
probably a couple days ago.
You're not always looking at
Yeah.
your speedometer, yeah.
Well, one person
You're
I
doing
pulled
what
over,
feels
it was like,
comfortable.
I was shortly after the radar sign, they slow down to, it's a 35, they slow down to 42, and I get them, and I'm like, all right, they're going 7 under, but they see me. They get by me. I don't know if they know how radar works. And then I see them, and I'm like, I swear that person's accelerating. I'm going to get that. And I see them going away from me. Now they're up to 48 in the curvy area, like, I'm not going to go and get them. So I'm like, all right. It's like a Rivian. You ever heard of that car?
Yeah.
R-I-V-I-A?
Yeah.
Never heard of
Electric
it.
car.
Yeah.
And so I can't even catch up to the thing. We're going up Gulf Road at 50. I'm like, just to catch up to them. I get to the top where it's safe to pull over. Now I got no radio service. I got no cell service. My laptop doesn't work. I pull over. Older person, and the first thing they said to me, "You ever drove one of these things?" And I said, "No." They're like, "It's fast." That was a great road. gave him a ticket, but a nice ticket. I said, well, I'm sorry, but.
Gave him a nice ticket.
Yeah, a nice ticket. And they said, no, totally understand. It was a negative thing, but it was like.
It was a conversation.
It was,
Yeah.
from their standpoint, they were just, felt as secure as possible. And I explained to them, I was like, yeah, but the person that was jogging right there when you went by at 50, 55, probably felt like you were going 100.
Right,
Please
right,
just
that's
be
scary.
cognizant about how people feel when they're walking or riding their bikes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for the
Yeah,
update.
thank you.
Oh,
Night,
excellent.
John.
That was cool.
All right, so we're back to citizens' concerns. And it doesn't look like we have anybody here right now. Review and approval of the warrants. So these are the ones we already signed, right?
Yep.
Okay.
I move that we approve the FY '24, June 30th, 2024 payroll warrant of $60,269.11.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, I move that we approve the FY '24, June 30th, 2024 vendor warrant of $90,217.90.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I-
Oh, I'm sorry, I needed to abstain from that one, I apologize.
Oh. I move that we approve the FY '25, July 10th, 2024 payroll warrant of $39,349.26 or 27. Should I round
think it's
up?
26.
There's a 9 on the.
That is a really
And
specific
20
amount.
cents.
What?
I said, and 20 cents.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's.
Can we include that we'll correct the cent position in that, or do we need to postpone?
No, you can
26.
amend it.
Yeah.
I'll figure it. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's 29.
Okay.
Oh, not 26? Okay, all right. $39,349.29.
Second.
Give or take 3 cents.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I move that we approve the FY '25, July 10th, 2024 vendor warrant of $336,358.72, which includes insurance, transfers, and the payment of the CPC library restoration work.
Second.
Any discussion?
Nope.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain?
Hi. Oh, you want to go on to minutes?
Yep, go into minutes. Now, on the executive session minutes, did we have a copy of that? I must have missed it.
It was a while back.
Oh, it's one that we've already had in review?
Yeah, in
Okay.
the,
In that case.
yeah. I know it's always like, it seems like a long time ago and that's.
Well, but when
yeah.
they come through in the envelope, I check them, and
Yep.
if I have any questions, I ask them. So
Yeah, I
know
do too.
already reviewed it.
Yep. No news is good news. I move that we approve the June 11th, 2024 executive session minutes.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. And I move that we approve the minutes, the regular minutes from June 25th, 2024.
Second.
Any discussion?
Nope.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Abstain. All right, I don't think there were any interim select board meetings. How about meetings and events attended by select board members? Bea, did you have anything?
Oh, yeah. Let's see. We had a building committee meeting. I sat in on a call with the senator's office regarding water. We had an EMS regionalization governance subcommittee meeting and an EMS regionalization task force meeting. That's it.
Okay. David? I'm
And you
sorry.
attended the 350th.
Oh, and the 350, and yeah, Saturday we all went to had a blast at the 350th in the West Northfield Playground.
Volunteer.
Volunteer celebration. Yeah, that was
Celebrate
fun.
Yet another fantastic event.
Yep. That's
So-
it. That wipes out my schedule.
Okay.
He was also there, yeah.
Yes.
Nothing.
And I spoke to several citizens about the EMS. People had questions about the EMS, which I brought forward, and about the last select board meeting, and then about I went to the 350th, and I also visited the Historical Society that's over on Pine Street.
Oh, the museum.
The little museum, yeah. They were having,
Oh, that's
they're
right, they had
open
an
on
open house.
Sundays.
Yeah.
Sundays from 12 to 2, I think, throughout July and August, they're open.
You're doing a great
Okay.
job.
All right, so we're just gonna start knocking things off the list here. So the placemaking workshop and action plan grant.
Yes, this grant was applied for in the last one-stop round when Mallory was here, and it's a placemaking grant. Placemaking is, to define it, the process of creating quality places that people want to live, work, plan, and learn in. And multifaceted approaches usually to the planning, design, and management of public spaces. So we received a grant from Mass Development for $8,000, which was supplemented with $4,000 in ARPA funds last fall. Due to issues at the state level with getting paperwork through them, we haven't been able to start until now. Leslie had released the RFP in the spring. We received a response to our original proposal from the Center for Resilient Metro Regions, who would be the facilitator for the project, including using college students. They have an affiliation with UMass to help work on this project and plan. And the idea is that the grant is to offer a series of events to engage residents in sharing their vision for downtown Northfield streetscape. Things like benches, improved signage, plantings, community events. That's placemaking. And we had talked about it last year that we were going to apply for this grant. And so they will then follow that up with, well, July and August we're getting the consultant on board. They're going to start working with interest groups meetings, and then we'll hold the first of 2 workshops. So they want to also do things like, go to the Creamy and talk to people. They want to not just hold a workshop, get one set of involvement. They want to go to some things where people are,
In the actual
gather that
places.
kind of event, that kind of information, hold a workshop to get a sense of what the community wants, what the community is looking for, what kind of spaces would they want to develop, what kind of events, what kind of event spaces. And then September and October, they'll work with the stakeholders, which might be like the Recreation Commission, other stakeholders and parts of the town that might also want to participate, and they'll do a second workshop. And the idea is that by October, November, they'll do a public presentation and present the plan. The idea of the plan being, here's some creative ideas that came out from your town, here's some possible funding sources, or some ways that you don't need a lot of money to implement. So that's the idea behind the process.
I remember talking about this quite a while back when Mary was on the board.
But it's right, because we had to apply for it under the one
Because
stop.
we were
which
talking
was
about this whole
over
area
there.
where the Creamy and everybody's parking and.
Right. There's been
Yeah.
talk about benches for walkers. We've had
Right.
requests for benches near the cemetery. Like, there's all sorts of ideas. And we're like, okay, let's get a town residents together to get a sense of what people want to see and what possible.
Take all those individual suggestions and get them into a
Right.
plan.
And what would that look like? Where
Okay.
would things be? How much would it cost? Or just how would things be happen? If you're talking about some standard events every year, and you have rec talking about it, what would they want to take on? Would you have different kinds of structures? So that is what the consultant will facilitate and work through with stakeholders, with residents, and some workshops, and come back to us with some ideas in a presentation and a plan.
So is this posted? Do the citizens have access to like the timeline and stuff like that?
The grant is on the Leslie's
Dashboard?
Dashboard, there's the
yeah.
word I was
Ding,
looking
ding,
for.
yeah.
I'd have to go back there and click and see exactly what pieces she has on the dashboard. She often has documents. So we haven't
So
finalized
this is the timeline that
This
you're
is what they
proposing?
proposed, however, because they started so late, they had a big problem getting us the approval, so we could, I mean, we knew about this grant in January, February, but we couldn't put out our RFP to even hire a consultant because it took months to get them back and forth. That staff person appears to no longer be there. So they have actually expanded our timeline and told us we could go a little later if it takes a little longer, but we're hoping for the most part to stick in this time frame. Maybe finishing things up a little later in the fall, maybe getting our plan a little later. It depends on how much time they need, because this started, we were hoping this was going to start 3 months ago, honestly. So
And that was because of the state?
we weren't getting responses to our emails about getting the contracts approved.
Okay.
So that did not allow us to put out an RFQ to get the actual consultants on board.
Okay. Got it.
And they've recognized that and have acknowledged that we would have more time to
Okay.
complete the process if that's what it takes.
And their guiding instructions are where? Like when we hire a consultant and we say, come do this
The
thing.
RFQ. And
Okay.
their response to the RFQ is
That's this, okay.
right. So we've given them an RFQ, which is generally based on the grant that we've put in for. And the grant is usually based on the agency that we apply for. So this is going to be through a specific agency that does these types of grants. So if we wanted to do something different, we would be writing a different grant, potentially for a different state agency. So if the Commonwealth this grant from the Commonwealth is from, let's see, that's actually his response. It was a placemaking workshop, action plan and development. Is it Commonwealth Places Grant Program. So this program that we applied to specifically does placemaking.
This CV is
Very impressive.
very impressive.
We were very lucky. We got a very impressive consultant, I think.
And the UMass students are working in conjunction with him under his supervision?
Correct. We would be guiding, I think they would be more like going out and talking to people, the kind of the data collectors
Yeah.
to kind of facilitate
I liked
that.
all of the municipal experience. I thought
Yes,
that was
he worked with Northampton for many years. So
Yeah.
yes, he definitely has a lot of experience in this particular
arena.
field.
And they're doing it all for 12K?
Yep.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions before we move on?
Nope.
I do not.
Comments?
It's coming to fruition, so I'm all for it.
Yep.
Okay.
And we've been talking about it for a few
So,
years.
right, the grant is, obviously to offer this series of events, encouraging residents to share their vision. Hoping the process kind of will build off the momentum of the 350th, because we've had a lot of stuff, so we're kind of hoping, and then you have the timeline.
And the
that,
tree 50th.
We're hoping to get, the consultant is hoping to get on, we're getting on board now, and then work with the interest group for the first meetings of the 2 workshops. We'll start the first group. September, October would be the stakeholders with the second workshop, and hopefully by October, November, like I said, it might be pushed out a month or 2, depending on how we get this going, would be our timeline.
I noticed that first workshop is, it said kids workshop.
Possibly, yes. They want to reach out to various, that's why we know the timeline might be off, because if they have to use school, that might be a little bit later, because the idea was this was supposed to start in the spring. So you could have gotten to the school in May,
Right.
but.
But our
the whole time that got
percentage of
pushed.
kids, so when we look at, we've got, a 2,800 person, and 24 of them are adults, are voting people. So 400 kids, and they're going to the schools. Are they only going to talk to Northfield kids? Are they going to talk to all the kids?
Well, this is all Northfield.
Okay, but the schools have different.
Right, but that plan that's what they're working on July and August, is the plan. So we haven't seen that, that's because we haven't technically approved this yet. I was bringing it to the select board first. So
Okay.
as soon as we sign that contract, the first thing we'll start working on is the plan. And then they will bring to us, here's our strategy.
Here's
like,
a schedule.
Here's a schedule.
Okay.
We're gonna have a
And then we
workshop,
can
how we're
comment
gonna
on
reach
the-
people, what,
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
And that'll come back before the select board. We're going to talk about that?
Well, it depends on, I mean, mostly that'll be meetings, I think there'll be a public meeting.
Okay.
There'll be a public workshop. And so I don't know that we're gonna bring every meeting before the select board. I mean,
No, but
Leslie
just
will
an
certainly
update
work,
at some
Leslie
point,
will
yeah.
certainly work with him. Yeah, oh yeah, we'll
Okay.
absolutely
Yeah.
update you as we go
No, that's-
along. Certainly anything
I
of,
think that's what we've been doing with each.
Right,
is like at
just-
some key point, key junctures, come in and
right,
do it in front of this, give an update in front of the
yeah.
select.
And that's what I anticipate Leslie will probably do.
But
Once
just to
we have-
clarify, you said the workshop for kids was one of the ideas. At
Well-
what point are we gonna,
I'm not sure it's just for kids.
okay,
I think the workshops aren't gonna be just,
inclusive?
right, oh, absolutely. I think that they're not, they're, the idea, I think,
Youth workshop, it says.
right, I think
specifically.
they would include youth, but I don't think he's gonna end up with just youth. This is all being worked out. This is all the visioning piece that they're gonna do between July and August.
Okay.
So
And-
we've got to, do we have to approve this so that they can actually start and get going and figure all this stuff out?
Yeah, if you guys wanna vote to award, then I haven't signed the contract. So, this vendor.
Okay. Well, I, just as a note, I look at this, at the CV of the person, the resume of the person who's applying to run the placemaking workshop, and it's pretty impressive. There's a lot of education and he has a lot of education and a lot of experience.
Yep.
A lot of traveling.
A lot of traveling, yep. So, my one caveat is I would like when after that first planning stage comes through, I'd love for that part to come back to the select board. Because when citizens want to ask about what's the specific thing that we're doing, what's the specific outline, I'd like to be able to tell them. Can that be one of the updates?
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, so, in the motion, do we need to, it's just for the duration of the contract, so we don't need to do a specific time duration?
No, I would say that we've just been told that we specifically asked if we could have a little more time because we're starting so late. So we have actually technically until June of next year, but we're not anticipating that. So I would just say that it's basically just to award the contract to this
To Wayne or the Center for Resilient
Center for
Metro?
Resilience.
Okay. So I will accept a motion
So moved.
to award the contract to the Center for Resilient Metro Regions, and that all expenses are paid by the two grants.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. National Interest Electric Transmission Corridor.
So this is, I don't know how many people have heard of this. It came up very quickly on the FERCog, and so there's just sort of coming to everyone's awareness. Basically, recent infrastructure laws amended the Federal Power Act so that the Secretary of Energy now has the ability to look at geographic areas for lack of transmission, and this is all about power grid and resiliency. And they're developing new transmission infrastructure to advance interests in those regions. If designated as a NIETC, National Interest Electric Transmission Corridor, this would unlock financing and permitting tools to spur transmission development. The idea behind all of this is to modernize and expand transmission infrastructure, increase reliability, resiliency, and access to clean, affordable electricity around the country. Now, having said that, what does that mean to Northfield? Designated in phase one of the potential, and we don't know this is certain yet, corridors would be the New York-New England corridor. So there's corridors all over the country, and there's the little tiny New York-New England corridor. There's all these different corridors that they've identified in phase one as having potential to be part of the process for undertaking resiliency and upgrading. Phase two is what we're actually in now, and that was preliminary list and comments period, which was when the FERCog actually discovered that this was a thing. Nobody knew, nobody had any concept that this was going on. And that period ended June 24th. I think the FERCog found out some 10 days prior that the period was going to end, as did other planning agencies around town, around the region. So this planning and comment period, in which the Department of Energy was publishing a list of the potential corridors the public could provide public comment and information, and that just ended June 24th. FERCog, other local planning agencies and parties submitted comments on June 24th, mostly and so that's the Berkshire Regional Planning Commission, and there was, one outside of Worcester, the Central Region. Most of the points they made concerned two things: making sure any corridor would be sensitive to environmental concerns and other regional impacts, and making sure there was good public engagement process in phase 3. So they all wrote comments very quickly to get them in by the deadline to make sure that those were on the record. Phase 3, which is in-depth work by the Department of Energy and the preparation of a draft to look at all these comments and to actually start to evaluate which of these corridors, I think, and prioritize them. This won't even begin until fall. So that period hasn't even begun yet. They've closed out their comment period. Apparently, the assumption is they're percolating on all of that, looking at all of these corridors, doing some analysis. Phase 4 is the final report, the designations, some kind of a document, to be determined at this point. We have no idea when that would even be because they haven't even posted phase 3. Just wanted to let you know, I have, because the FERCog got involved and all these regional planning agencies got involved, they really wanted to make sure that they knew that these regional planning agencies wanted to be involved and that stakeholders be informed and involved in any comments. I did receive an email from the Eversource community relations person on this topic, and he wanted to make it very clear that their understanding was that the Department of Energy is only evaluating the corridor that comes into Northfield, because that's where it goes, not proposing any specific project at this time. So we're just getting this on the radar screen. It could be a year before we're even talking about this again. But if anything gets out, I just wanted you guys to be appraised that there is a process here. Eversource doesn't intend to do any widening to the existing right-of-way or impacting any of the abutters. They believe the existing corridor can accommodate any new transmission line that might be proposed as part of this process. And that's right from Eversource. They also stressed that even if Eversource were to propose a project in this corridor, they would engage in extensive community outreach, looking for local feedback and input. So that's on the local ground. So Eversource has already reached out to the towns, the stakeholders, and said, hey, we're not doing anything hasty. We don't even know if there's going to be a project, but if there is, we'll keep you informed.
So they've said So they said in one instance, I'm just trying to, that they're not going to do anything no widening or anything to affect the abutters. But then if they did,
either way, even if there was going to be a project with additional transmission line in their current corridor, they're still going to be involved in public outreach. So it wasn't an even but if. It was more
was it an agreement to keep it within the current corridor?
Well, I don't know what an agreement means. They're saying they don't see any need to widen that even if a new transmission line is proposed. They think their corridor can accommodate that.
Okay.
I mean, they're not going to make any promise, they're
So
not
they're
making
gonna
any
use-
contract, but they don't anticipate it.
Okay, so at this point, they're going to utilize the existing corridor.
Correct. If there's even a project proposed, I mean, we don't even know that won't decide that this corridor is fine and be doing a project out in the Midwest somewhere first.
Okay.
This could be years, if ever, in happening. But just wanted to let you know that the New York-New England corridor is one of the multiple corridors that are identified. Nothing might happen of this. Nothing might come of it for a decade or more or ever. But Eversource did, hear concerns from the community saying, hey, what's going on? And they want to say, look, we're not anticipating any change to our corridor, even if a new project is proposed at this time.
And where does it tie in Northfield? Because I don't see it on the map.
Northfield's the very end of the New England, New York corridor. Comes right into Northfield, right up to First Light, up to the mountain.
It runs over the mountain, and it actually just goes from Irving right into Northfield at that point. And I think
Then
that
it runs to New
Bernie
York.
this was another not this one, but I think there was another Eversource project or concern coming up from the south, like the Springfield area, that Bernie Boudreau was following.
This one comes out of Albany, comes this way.
Right, it comes
Across.
west to east, and then it comes up 63 to
Where
the
the,
mountain.
where the current transmission
Yeah.
lines are now.
Right,
So in this, you're saying,
Yeah, okay.
that's
It's
Northfield Mountain right there,
That's Northfield Mountain.
so
where it ends.
it ends here at Northfield Mountain?
Correct.
Yeah, just over
And
the
then
line
runs
from
back
Irving
all the way to
Northfield.
almost Albany. But this is the current transmission lines. So they're not proposing any new corridor. So
Right.
where you're seeing the current corridor is exactly what they're showing on the map. They're not putting any new lines in.
I got it.
And there's no proposal to put any new lines in. But if you look at the map, the New England one is tiny. There are some huge transmission lines when
Yeah.
you start to get out into the Midwest, Mid-Atlantic, and some of Mountain Northwest. Some of those may have huge projects before anything even shows up in the New England corridor. We don't have any idea if in phase 3 they're even going to identify the New York New England corridor as needing or having any potential changes.
Okay, so
We're
this is,
just very much in the very beginning.
this is a big heads up.
Yes, because it's out there. I just want to make sure you guys were aware of it, but I don't want people to panic that all of a sudden they're going to be, building out there.
Eversource hearings.
We
and
don't
the
even
like.
know that they're
Yeah.
going to choose this as a corridor.
Right, got
It
it.
could completely disappear, and the New York New England corridor is not even proposed.
So if folks want to have more information about it, these links, what's the best link for them to go to?
I would say go to the Franklin Regional Council of Governments
Okay.
website.
FERCog.org.
Yes, and there's they have information on it if they search it on the FERCog website. So,
If they search,
well, it's the National Interest. It's NIETC, but it's National Interest National Interest Electric Transmission Corridor,
Okay.
NIETC, and so they've been keeping information on that.
okay, great. Do they have a deadline they did, I'm sorry, I'm lost in these papers. What's the deadline that we're going to know something for us?
Oh, the next thing we will know is sometime in the fall, they haven't set a date, would be phase 3, which is supposedly when they even determine what potential corridors they're looking at. So that would be, and they haven't given a specific date, but it won't be till fall at the earliest.
And FERCog will be monitoring this?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
They'll
yeah,
be letting us
okay.
know.
They're
It's
the
totally on their radar
regional-
screen now.
Yeah, they're the regional planning.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so financial assistant job classification.
So yes, so the job classification went out for the financial assistant, and it looks like they're looking for a grade 5 classification. This was the new
We all
job that's going to be
landed.
the combined
And
treasurer's
5.
position, accounting position, and some hours in the assessor's office. And Dan B., myself, Aaron, and Michelle all did review of this position and sent in our,
we were all pretty close, too.
yes, even the one that was a 4 is a high 4. So, but then I talked to both of them, and they think 5 is appropriate.
Yeah, it's consistent with other positions.
And the previous position Aaron was in.
Right, and plus, this person would actually be doing cross-functional in and among the 3 offices. So we
So-
felt it was important to get somebody with some,
Ability to learn all of that.
So do we need to make a motion on that?
Correct.
Okay,
To make that position a grade 5.
so I will accept motions to make financial assistant job a grade 5. Are there steps?
Not yet, until you hire someone.
Okay.
Yep.
It's just classified on a 5. And
So
then
moved.
Then we can advertise it.
Okay.
Second.
Any discussion?
Nope.
All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
All right. And end of year budget transfers?
You have those, you
Yep.
have the originals in front of you. There's only three final ones. Pretty
I have the
simple.
copies.
Yeah, you have copies in there, but those are the ones you'll have to sign.
Okay.
Those are the originals. The first one is for the sewer. because the way we voted at town meeting, the sewer reserve fund actually is a separate line item than the rest of the sewer budget. We're going to consider that next year. And so they're looking to move $6,824.90 into the sewer overtime line from the sewer reserve fund.
So moved.
Second.
And
Any discussion?
just wanted to let you know that a lot of it was overtime because we only had still one full-time employee. So the
Yep.
hope is we won't be having this quite so much anymore because we now have a second full-time employee and possibly a part-time one that will be coming on board as part of it.
Yep.
So,
I think it's safe to say Karen's got a good handle on
right.
everything.
You said that they needed to reconsider the way that's set up. How do we reconsider the way that's set up?
It's how it's put on the town meeting warrant.
Okay.
So when budget time, I'll talk to Karen and just move it in as a line item so it goes into the general budget as a reserve fund. And then it will automatically backfill if you have negatives in any of the line items, as opposed to now having it as a separate line item, which means whenever you want to use the reserve fund, you have to do transfers, which really kind of defeats the purpose. It makes it more
Right.
cumbersome.
That's what the reserve fund's for.
Right, a general
Yeah.
reserve fund should be general reserve fund.
Okay,
ability.
and we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, the next one.
The next one is, I had to do a little bit of an updated form that I sent you because the way Tom sent it through, I didn't change much of anything except he put in account bottom line totals and we really have to move between accounts. So it's still $3,500 to be transferred from the maintenance of the facility, but the highway garage maintenance other into machine maintenance repair line item.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
And he has that as unforeseen maintenance on one of his trucks, plus higher oil prices.
Okay, how's that one in there? Oh,
Yeah.
but I see it here.
Yeah, there's two pieces because I did an updated one with the specific accounts in it, but it's the same thing.
Okay. Any discussion? I don't know if I asked that already. All in
No.
favor?
Aye.
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 And the last is the library request to move money out of the operating lines to cover the library salary. And there's some excess in the library operating funds, and mostly the salary has to do with subbing hours, some of which were not in the budget. We didn't really do that, and we did have a person who was out sick for some period of time, and we've looked at the subbing line item now and the part-time line item, and we've adjusted for that a little bit, but there wasn't enough in the subbing line item to cover the time period for which someone who is benefited was out for
Gotcha.
sick leave.
Is there a reorganization that we can do to, at the town meeting to make that flow more smoothly?
We've already taken care of it in next year's budget, hopefully,
Okay, great.
for 25.
You would just adjust your amounts.
She
in the
actually
accounts,
increased the
right?
subbing line
Yeah.
item request already.
Yeah.
All right. And there's one more thing here, which is a
we
bill
vote on that?
relative to paint recycling.
Did we vote on
We
that?
didn't vote on this.
Oh, gosh, I'm so sorry. So a motion to, that was the library? Let me go back.
Yes.
A motion to amend, to move the Dickinson Memorial Library funds. I will
dollar
tell you.
amount?
$2,365.64
Yes.
from operating to library salary.
So moved. How about that?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So you just did, just FYI, the finance committee did this
Last
exact
night.
same thing last night. It just said-
Appropriation transferred between
Yep.
appropriation accounts, both have to sign that.
Yeah.
So you both do it.
Okay. Representative appointment to Franklin County Cooperative Inspections Program.
Now that we're a member, this is a new position to have somebody be on their board because we've now joined their electrical and plumbing inspection program, and therefore it opens a seat for the town to be represented on their board. We haven't had this representation before because we weren't a member, but now that we are,
How often does their board meet? Is it quarterly?
I would imagine, they're
I
not
can look it up.
monthly. Not even
David,
that
would you
much.
be interested?
In what?
In
Being the
that?
representative for a
Yeah.
quarterly
I'm
meeting
just
I thought you were going to ask something else.
No.
for,
Franklin County Cooperative Inspection.
so this is when we just recently took.
Sure, I'd love to. Sign me up. No need to expand upon it further.
All right, so I'll accept a motion to nominate,
Appoint David.
to appoint David McCarthy as the representative to Franklin County Cooperative Inspections Program from Northfield.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Thank you, David.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Pearson Road
Thanks for
Water
the second.
Mains, Northfield Water Company.
At the last select board meeting, there was a question about asking them about, you expressed concerns.
Yep.
We did hear back from the East Northfield Water Company. They are obviously concerned as well. They said they're beginning discussions with contractors to get estimates for replacing,
Okay.
to open a road, you have to contact the highway department. Hopefully, you're working in conjunction.
Mm-hmm.
Highway department doesn't like you, for example, to go into a brand new road and open it up after they've just paved it. So generally, there's communication between them, hopefully ahead of time, like if they're gonna fix a road, and they know there's a problem, then usually, highway will reach out. But some of the road doesn't get repaired until infrastructure gets repaired for that very reason. Because there's no, Destiny doesn't wanna pave the road and then have it opened up for an infrastructure project.
Right. So,
Hence
but- and
what's
that's a
going on in
town,
the
but that's a
highway.
town road, and
Yeah.
so Tom, who's the highway department chair, head,
Super, yeah.
will be involved in that?
They'll have to contact him to open the road.
Okay.
If they're going to put a new main in, yes.
And they
Oh,
would
yes.
contact him directly or contact
Yes.
him through you?
They would contact him directly, most
Okay.
likely.
I think Tom's concern was that they actually get it onto a schedule because he wants to do work on
Yes.
Pearson Road. Yeah.
So we've
But
alerted
he doesn't
them.
want to do work until he has a commitment from them as to what they're going to do and when they would do it.
Right.
And I think what the president of East Northfield Water Company is just giving a heads up that it could be a bigger, more expensive project than
Right.
everyone's assuming, and then that in turn affects those water customers.
All right. Any other discussion on that? The campground driveway drainage.
Correct. So I pulled the driveway permit because I get a copy of those, the application for curb cuts. And they do have, the caveat about allowing for discharge of water from the catch basin and the sump. I did email them, and their concern is, they admit it was a temporary fix because they had to get trucks down there for the well. So they're not saying that what the culvert size, the pipe size is the permanent size. They will address the issue when the driveway is permanently installed. And they've been watching it. They haven't seen it go that high, but they'll be sure that it'll be taken care of and watched. So it will not be that size pipe permanently. It was put in for the road to be temporary to get the trucks down for the well.
Which is what Tommy thought it was.
Correct.
Yeah.
So they've confirmed that. They know that the town is aware of it and that there's concern and they should be watching it. And they were fine with that. They acknowledged it.
Okay.
Request for a support letter from the Franklin County Solid Waste District for House Bill H823, an act relative to paint recycling.
This was a request that came from the Solid Waste Management District, which we are a part of, for a specific bill that's going through about forcing people to take paint as recycling and keep it out of the waste stream.
Okay. And what's the role of our letter of support?
Well,
Just-
as a member, I think that's to help our legislators know that
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 it's
Northfield, they're
important.
asking all their community, they have
And
19
they'll be more
communities,
likely to pass it.
if they know that there's interest at the local level.
Right.
Okay.
Is the Board of Health, is this on their agenda as well?
I don't know if the FCCIP reached out to them,
Oh.
they might have
I
directly.
would think so.
Yeah.
It's very possible.
And the water, the Pearson Road water mains also, does the Board of Health have a role in that?
They haven't said anything. I just came up at a select board meeting.
Okay. So,
For the waste?
For the water main.
for the water
Oh.
main, because their health is also water.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Sorry, I thought we were
So
doing the support letter.
could we do, what do you think about forwarding this request for support to the Board of Health? And can we bring the Board of Health in on the Pearson Road water main? Just bring them into it?
Do you mean actually bring them into a meeting or?
No, I mean, send them a notice of what's going on in case they don't know. I think that, water is part of the Board of Health's responsibility, so it'd be good to have them knowing about it. Okay, so I will accept a motion to sign as a select board the letter of support on House Bill H23, an act relative to paint recycling.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Nope.
Nope.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so we'll pass that around to sign.
So I just want to clarify, so can you just double check that the Board of Health got this too? Because this is waste, the waste district, and they contract with them, right? I'm assuming they would want to do a similar. I think the Board of Health on the
Well, I know that they're
Sewer might want one too.
yeah.
Yeah.
People don't pour their paint down the drain.
Yeah, exactly.
Might as well show a bunch of support for it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I can't lean.
No, I can't reach.
Gee.
Thank you.
Okay. Committee and board appointments. I'm looking for a motion to
I move
appoint-
that we appoint Steve Sarandinsky as the Select Board Representative to the Emergency Services Building Committee, term expiring December 31st, 2024.
Second.
Steve's been a long-term member and has a lot of knowledge, and prior to this, he was the Planning Board Representative, so it'd be nice to have some continuity on the board. Yeah.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I move that we appoint Sandra Campbell to the Historical Commission, term expiring December 31st, 2026. I already talked to Sandra and we're totally
Second.
excited to have her and Lindsay working on the cemetery. I already told the veterans at the 350th. Everyone couldn't be more pleased with Sandra and Lindsay, and Sandra's gonna get onto the Historical Commission. So we're all good with that.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then we have reappointments.
I move that we reappoint Gretchen Licata to the Stewardship Advisory Committee, term expiring June 30th, 2027.
Second.
That the Stewardship Advisory Committee does a lot of work clearing the trails and taking care of
Northfield lands.
the lands for under the aegis of COMSCOM. So,
Yep.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I move that we reappoint Jesse Wigan to the Trust Fund Committee, term expiring June 30th, 2027.
Excuse me.
What's the Trust Fund Committee? What does that do?
Loaves and Fishes. It's a trust fund that the town has combined multiple trust funds to one, and they do.
So they look at all the applications.
They look at all the
for-
applications that come in for various types of assistance that the town has a trust fund for.
And then they recommend to us, and then we
Correct.
approve the
So
dollar
when they've
amounts.
met, they'll do
Yeah.
it. It can be anything from fuel assistance
Yep.
to, it can be anything, helping with a repair on a
Temporary-
house.
Temporary rent.
Right,
Yeah,
all sorts of things.
like that.
And they review those and they recommend them to the select board out of the trust funds.
Cool. So if citizens wanted to apply for help in that way, how would they go about doing that?
It's on the,
They contact
Catherine.
Harrison,
Yep.
Yeah.
Loaves and Fishes.
Okay.
That's the most efficient way to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Kathy
Loaves and
Hawkins Harrison
Yep.
in Loaves and Fishes.
Right, it's
Okay.
very confidential.
Yes.
Excellent. All right. So we have a nomination and a second. So all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Proposed agenda items? Anybody have things to add?
I do not.
Not at this time.
Okay. Announcements. Vacancy. There's a vacancy on the Finance Committee.
A new one, yes.
And the Finance
So-
Committee is
Sue Kuzinski is retired.
nominated by
Moderator.
the moderator.
Mhm.
And so you should reach out to the moderator via the email online.
It's effective immediately, so anybody who's interested, feel free to go and reach out to the moderator.
Okay.
Is it on the, let me just look on the, is it on the town webpage?
Yeah, we usually add it
Right on the front.
I
Yeah.
wanted to announce it first.
first, and then she'll
Yep.
put it on, like she did for the last one.
Yep.
And then they'll
Great.
click through and have the moderator's contact.
It's a really good group. It's 2 new people plus a third, but
It's gonna be
they're
very,
already like good to go.
yes.
Okay, Town Administrator contract. I'm going to read this from the chair. In the last Select Board meeting, in executive session, the board voted to exercise the non-renewal option of the Town Administrator contract. Thus, her current contract ends June 30th, 2025, but we will be entering into negotiations for a new contract. Recognition for service.
Well, I'd certainly like to recognize Bernie Prada for leading the Finance Committee
Yeah.
for many, many years.
Sue Kuzinski.
And now Sue Kaczynski is leaving, so we're looking forward to our new members. I think that's going to be a great group. Very interested. Had our first kickoff meeting yesterday. It'll be quiet for a little while now, probably.
This is a good time to be a new
It is
member.
because the beginning will be fall
Yeah.
to start the whole fiscal cycle
Yeah.
over, so you're not going to be coming in the middle. But I'd like to just recognize those two because I've worked with them the entire time I've been here. So they've been a great 2 members. Very responsive, very involved.
Bernie was instrumental in working with Lois too,
Right,
especially in
so.
that last year. So
Okay.
just another shout out to the 350th on that event. I think that was
Yeah.
really fun, and it just kind of put a nice capstone on a lot of multiple years worth of work.
And I had a shout out to the Sewer Commission, because they just successfully got a new consent order signed and some, that'll be good for our town, and they've been just so much hard work on that, so
Yeah.
go them, go us. All right, so we're going to adjourn for executive, are we doing executive? Yeah, adjourn for executive session. Per Massachusetts General Law C-30A, Section 21A6, Emergency Services Location, Real Estate, to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real estate if the chair declares that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiation position of the public body, not to return to open session.
Declare it that it's going to have. You have to actually say, "I declare."
I declare.
You declare that it's going to have a detrimental effect. You
Yeah.
have to make
Oh,
that
I'm so
declaration.
sorry. I declare the open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiation of the public body. So I need a motion for that, and then we do roll call vote, right?
Yeah.
So
Motion.
moved.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any
Me,
discussion?
yes.
All in favor? Sarah, yes?
I'm gonna abstain because I gotta leave.
Oh.
David, yes.
All right, so we are adjourned not to return.
Okay.